Hello, my name is Professor Gameiro, and this class is about human resources or the nature of human resource. This is the introductory topic. So the course is going to be called Human Resources Management, and the book that I kind of based this course is Human Resources Management. This is the 9th edition. So I think this is a very good course if you wanted to learn more about human resources and you have no idea what it is, what it's about. So a lot of people know the term, right, HR, but they don't know sometimes what is included in HR HR responsibilities in a company. So let's go and dive into this introductory class. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is the nature of human resources management. This is the topic of today's class. Human resources, HRM, is the basis of all management activity, but it's not the basis of all business activity. A business may depend fundamentally on having a unique product like a Dyson vacuum cleaner or obtaining the necessary funding like the London bid to stage the Olympic Games or on identifying previous and noticed market niche like a Saga services. So these are three examples. Right? The basis of management is always the same, getting the people of the business to make things happen in a productive way so that the business prospect and the people thrive. So the business objective is going to be something like producing a product or getting a service done. And the human resources manager is kind of a way to make it effective, to hire the right people for the service, make people engage in the service. They will be efficient, right, to producing more. So that's the basis of management. It's always the same, even though the business is different. For example, there are different business. They are doing different things. For example, iPhones producing iPhones. Car manufacturers manufacturing cars. Some people are offering services. So the business objective is different, but the human resources is the objective is always the same: to make the business profitable, to make the business efficient, to make the people who are working for the business happier. Happier people make more, make better, good job instead of people who are unhappy in that position. All right, so all organizations have to draw on a range of resources to function and to achieve their objectives. They need to access capital to finance their operations, land and premises to operate from, energy, equipment, and raw materials in order to manufacture a product or deliver a service. They also require access to some form of distribution network so that they can publicize, sell, or dispense their goods and services. So all business, they need all those things to work, right? So they need capital, they need people to work on them. So I kind of put it there some of our requirements that's very common for any kind of business. So in addition, human resources are required in order to provide organizations with know-how, ideas, and labor. So you always need people, right? Even if you have a company of one person, so you are the person who are doing. So you are the human being kind of making this business work, even though if it was one person. In a competitive market economy, the effectiveness and efficiency with which an organization manages its relationship with the suppliers of all kinds of resources determine its success. For example, you might say, oh, if it's only about me, the company with one person, so it will be successful. Not necessarily, because if you're trying to do something because you want the money, oh, this is a good business because it makes a lot of money, but you hate doing it. So soon enough, you will find out, oh, I'm not very good in this business because I don't like it. I don't appreciate doing this, right? And then you feel like, oh, I have to do this because I need the money. So people who are not motivated, they would not do a good job. And the human resource is kind of a good way or a kind of an effective way to try to manage, to understand why people are happy, to engage in people, to hire the best people possible. So when you're trying to do something that you don't like it, you're kind of hiring yourself knowing that you don't like to do it. So that's not going to work, right? All right. So so all kinds of resources to determine success. So in the case of human resources, kind of determine the right people for the right job. And the scarcer the resources, and the scarce the resource and the more critical it is to particular organizations, operations, the greater the skill, time and effort needed to order to manage a relationship. So I'm trying to say, if it is scarce to find people to do what you're looking for, so the greater the skill you have to be employed to find those people, right? So maybe even pay them a little bit more, right? Because it's scarce. But if it's abundant, so it's going to be easier to find people. You can pay less. This is kind of the law of demand and supply. But okay. So just as the workforce has changed, so have the methods used to manage its members. The more specialized the roles, it has become to find individuals with the right skills. So the more specialized you are, less people are going to be, the more rare to find those people, right? So the more specialized, you can even charge more to do to provide this a job in that skill area. So qualification, attributes, and experience to understand them. So it has also become harder to keep people once they are employed because competitors are always keen to secure the services of the most talented people by offering them a better deal. For example, let's say you hire a person, right? So this is kind of a very hard to find this person with this specialized skill. But now that you hire them, your competitors, they wanted to steal the employee from you, right? Making better offer, pay more salary, whatever, because it's a scarce commodity. People who have a specialized skill. Employing organizations have had to acquire a capacity to developing people effectively, together with increasing sophisticated approaches to recruit, selection, retentions, employee relations, and performance management. For example, it's not very uncommon that you hire a person, then you need to develop this person. They may have a skill, but they are not used to the culture of your company. So you kind of develop them, adapt them to the company. You even pay some courses for them to get an update on their area. And now you have the problem of retention, because now the employee is a good employee. He's adapted to your company. He is updated on his area. He's doing a good job. Now comes the competitor and try to steal them from you because you are the one who invested. A lot of companies, they kind of hire people. They're not very good. They invest in them. They pay them courses, and then comes the competitor and steal them from you, right, from the company. Further sophistication is required due to the substantial body of employment regulations that now governs the management of the employees' relationship in most industrialized countries. So this is not something that you can do as you will, right? Because there's a lot of regulations and laws about how to do this, or a lot of laws to employ when dealing with people, right? So they have rights too. The process becomes more complex still in the case of organization that employs people in different countries. So maybe you're an international company. Now you have employees in two different countries and they have different laws and regulations to how to deal with employees. And this has become more complex in that situation. Not only do they have to grapple with a range of often diverse legislative and public policies regimes, but also they have to find ways of effectively managing people whose expectations vary significantly for cultural reasons. So an international company is very common to deal with these issues, right? So sometimes they feel like one country have higher expectation of salaries, other doesn't have as much. The expectation is lower. Not only about salary, but many other aspects, right? So expectation is gonna be varying from the different countries because of their different cultures. Let's see one example. In 2008, 25 years after it was first planned, the Terminal 5 in the Heathrow Airport in London finally opened its door to passengers. The total cost of the building was 4.3 billion. So, and why did this happen? Why did the debacle happen? So let's see here what's the situation. So this is the terminal at Heathrow Airport in London, right? This is a picture. In the first few days of the operation, over 300 flights scheduled to depart from Terminal 5 were cancelled. Very long queues formed in the check-in and transfer desk, while some 28,000 passengers found themselves separated from their luggage. So why? So can you understand this? Can you imagine a situation like this? So it appears that the major reason was simply extraordinarily poor management of people. So the major immediate problem arose because the staff were not properly trained to use the equipment at Terminal 5 and were unprepared when it came to solving the technical glitches that quickly appear once the baggage handling machine start operating. So it means the employees were unprepared. They're not used to handle the technology of the baggage, right? So and then that was the consequences that happens. Right? They are unprepared, right? So British Airways staff were neither committed to the success of the operation nor to their employer. Goodwill was in short supply, leading staff to be intransigent and uncooperative, when effort, positive enthusiasm, and flexibility were what was required. So this is a problem, right? So because this is a people problem, not the technology. Well, the technology would work if people know how to use it. But you see here a lot of insights of what the problem is. That people are unprepared, they are not patient, and they're not committed to solve the problem. And then this has become a huge problem, and this is why the problem happened in the first place. Like a lot of connections are canceled because there wasn't enough willing people to tackle and solve the problem. And this is kind of the human resource problem because when you hire somebody, they need to be committed, they need to be responsible. For example, they open the airport. This is new, right? You're gonna have a lot of problems. And people committed, they will not give up. They would kind of be patient. They would do the maximum for themselves to try to solve the problem. And did not happen on that day. Example number 2. And now this is going to be about regulations of minimum wages in USA to increase from $7.5 to $15 an hour. So business who has low profit margins have to close the doors and jobs were lost. For example, if I have a very low margin and the law require me to raise the salary for my employees, maybe I'm go under, and I have no other choice because I cannot run the business if I have no profit, right? So I may need to close the doors. So recent graduates are finding it harder to get the first job experience because there's no more opportunity, right? So the government was trying to do a good thing, right, raising people's salary, but now I cannot maintain my shopping doors open because it's not profitable for me anymore. I shut down. So in that, the consequence was less opportunity for people who are new graduates, right? So, for example, new graduates needs kind of the first job, right? So they can develop skills and improve, right? So developing qualities like this one: responsibility, assiduity, relationship with coworkers and boss, etc. So if they never had an experience to working in a place, they're never gonna be able to say, "Oh, I have job experience." This is kind of the problem with the chicken and egg, right? The chicken and the egg. So who comes first, the chicken or the egg? For example, people say, you don't have a job experience, I cannot hire you. How can you don't have a job experience if nobody hires you in the first place? So it's important that new graduates have opportunities, right, to get jobs. If they don't have for example, if there's less companies, there will be less opportunity. That's the problem here, right? Because of the regulation. So a lot of companies close down and now they have less opportunities. The term human resources management is not easy to define. This is because it's commonly used in two different ways. So those two different ways are personal management and human resources management. So let's try to make it differentiate between those two, right? So time and planning perspective. So in the personal management, short term, reactive, and it's kind of a marginal. So psychology contracts, they comply with the psychological contract. So external control, this is the control system, they're external. So they're pluralist, collective, and low trust. They also bureaucratic, mechanic, centralized, formal, and defined roles. And there's specialists and professionals, and they cost minima. minimalization. So now this is the perspective of personal management. So what's the perspective of human resources management? So for example, here's short term, here's a long term. You don't want to hire somebody who's going to leave your company 1 year later, right? So turnover is becoming more of a problem in nowadays. In my father generation, he works about the same company his whole life, but now this is becoming rare, right? So if you kind of invest in an employee, pay them to be updated, and now they're gonna change jobs, this is not very good. So this is a human resources problem. They try to make the employee to stay in the company for long term, and this is kind of a personal management. Like you have to do something for today, right? Make people happy today, but you're not thinking about it in the long term. For example, here, the psychological contract of personal management, for example, they want people to be compliant, right, with the company policies and the compliance with the situation. Here is human resources wanted the people to be committed, right? Because, for example, you may comply with the company, but you don't like the company. Your plan is to leave the company soon. So here is not the same situation. Even though you're compliant, you are also committed to stay, to make it happen, right? Okay. So external control, here's a self-control. So this is a pluralist, collective, low trust. This is unitarist, individual, high trust. So you see, they're kind of the opposite, right? So this is a bureaucratic, mechanic, centralized, formal, defined role. Here's organic, devolved, and flexible roles. So here's a specialist professional. He's largely integrated into the line of management. And here's a cost minimization. Here's a maximum utilization, human asset accounting. So you kind of use the people in their maximum way of to giving back to the company, right? So these are the two main differences between those two terms, and I hope you see the distinction between those two, because they sometimes being used intertwined. Sometimes you have to define what you're talking about, and these are the differences there. Now let's do some activity, right? So pay attention, because you will have to perform this activity by the end of this part. So I will probably stop the video and let you do it by yourself, right? To see how much you understand. So each of the 4 types of human resources objective is important and necessary for organization in different ways. However, at certain times, one or more can assume greater importance than the others. Can you identify types of situation in which could become more significant or urgent? Take a few minutes to discuss ideas with a partner and be ready to present those. All right. Now we're going to see all the 4 objectives of human resources, and then I ask you to pay attention, because you'll have to do the activity after we finish this concept. So the first objective is a personal management, okay? So let's see the staffing objectives. Human managers are the first concerned with ensuring that the business is appropriately staffed and thus able to draw on the human resource it needs. This involves designing organization structures, identify under what type of contract different groups of employees or subcontractors will work before recruiting, selecting, and developing the people required to fill the roles. For example, this is about how you're going to be hired. Is there a contractor for a limited time? You're going to be permanently? What are the benefits? So it's kind of the structure, right, of the company. So before you hire somebody, you need to have the structure done, because how can you, this is what we are offering. So you don't have the structure, you don't know how you're going to be paying or something like that. So it's important, right, to have the structure done. The right people with the right skills to provide their services when needed. For example, sometimes the right structure for this kind of job or service is going to be incentive to people to work better. There are some better structure for different kind of jobs, right? For example, if you give commissions, people are up. They want to work more. They're flexible in time. The kind of every structure has different effect on people. It depends on the job. Is going to be one who's going to be better than the other. There is a need to compete effectively in the employment market. by recruiting and retaining the best affordable workforce that is available. This involves developing employment packages that are sufficiently attractive to maintain and require employees' skill levels and, where necessary, disposing of those judged to no longer to have a role to play in the organization. Okay, now still on staffing objectives. This is kind of at the end of this part here. The tighter a key employment market becomes, the harder it is to find and then hold on the people an organization needs in order to compete effectively. So it means the less people, the scarce they are, or maybe it's a very high skill position, it's going to be harder to find and retain those people. In such circumstance, increased attention has to be given to developing competitive pay packages. Money is not the only way that you can attract people and retain them. So, for example, if the environment was horrible, they're very stressed, they may consider other things that as well to stay in the company. So developing competitive pay packages and other stuff, right? To the provision of value, training and developing opportunities, and to ensuring that the experience of working in the organization is, as far as possible, rewarding and fulfilling. This is not only about money, but even though money is a very important one. All right, so this is a personnel. Now let's go to the second objective. Oh, sorry, do still have one more slide for the personal management. Okay, so but now we're going to talking not about the staffing objectives. Now we're going to be talking about performance objectives. So once the required workforce is in place, human resources managers seeks to ensure that the people are well motivated and committed so as to maximize their performance in their different roles. Training and developing have a role to play, as do reward systems to maximize effort and focus attention on performance targets. In many organizations, particularly where trade unions play a significant role, human resources managers negotiate improved performance with the workforce. So a lot of countries, they have trade unions, right? So a human resources manager has to negotiate with them. This is kind of a employees asking for rights or maybe raising salary or better conditions, right? So human resources are always dealing with those trade unions, and they try to make everybody happy. This is kind of a battle that's not a battle, but a negotiation at least, right? So it has to do with the performance objectives, because if people are not happy, they would not perform well. So you have to maximize their performance. Okay, a term that is currently very fashionable in human resources circle is the employee engagement. It's increasingly recognized that the key determinant of a superior competitive performance is a propensity on the part of the organization's employees to demonstrate discretionary effort. Essentially, this means that they choose to go further in the service of their employer than is strictly required in their contract of employment. Working long hours, perhaps working with a greater enthusiasm and taking the initiative to improve systems and relationships. Willingness to engage in such behavior cannot be forced by managers. For example, here we're talking about when the employees is walking the second mile, right? For example, they're willing to stay maybe long hours. They're willing, of course, the structure of the position maybe has to do with that, right? But you cannot force employees to do something that is not in the pay structure and the requirements, right? But also, if the employer are happy, they want to see the company succeed. They're not planning to leave the company. They wanted the company to succeed. They have some skin in the game, so they kind of are willing to do as best as they can for the better for the company, right? So this has to do with the performance objective. So they're performing better. They kind of are trying to do their best because they wanted the well-being of the company. They wanted the company to prosper. So, okay, now let's talk about change management objectives. So a third objective is how human resources effectively managing change. So the key activities include the recruitment and or development of people with the necessary leadership skills to drive the change process. I have been in companies when they have to do some changes and people don't like changes. That's normal, right? This is the status quo. People don't like changing, especially older people. They're not willing to learn new things, right? And they kind of maybe in the threat of losing their jobs. So you need to do a process of changing, right? So the human resources are usually the one who are managing changes. So the employment of change agents to encourage acceptance of change and the constructions of reward system which underpin the change process. Timely and effectively employee involvement is also crucial because people support what they help to create. For example, if you have find a way that the employees can participate in the change, they will be more willing, right, to stay and to support. Because if they kind of a change is imposed, they did not participate. For example, you have maybe ask your opinion. How can we make this better? And the employee gets together, they give opinions, and there, for example, some of their opinions are taken, and they feel like, oh, this is me, right? This is part of me. So they kind of be more engaged into make the change. But if something that is imposed, they kind of be more resistant. However, it must be also be remembered that change, particularly when imposed without genuine employee involvement, it's also a major potential source for conflict in the organization. This is what I was just talking about. All right, now let's talk about administration objectives. The fourth type of objective is focused on underpinning the achievement of other forms of objective. In part, it's simply carried out in order to facilitate an organization smooth running. Hence, there is a need to maintain accurate and comprehensive data on individual employees, a record of their achievement in terms of performance, their attendance and training records, their terms and conditions of employment, and their personal details. Oh, sorry. And personal details. However, there is also a legal aspect. Too much administrative activity means that it's done because of their business required by law to comply. Minimum wages, taxes deduction, bookkeeping, etc. So human resources has to maintain, right? So a lot of information because they have to comply with regulations that the government imposes to them, right? So how they sometimes government, oh, this is the right of the employee. So for you to deal with the employee in the right way, you have to maintain some data so it can, as you can prove what you're doing with the employee, right? And has to do with the wages, taxes, deductions, bookkeeping, right? So the performance of the employee. For example, if you have to fire someone, you have to kind of give some explanation why you're doing, because if you kind of fire someone unjustifiably, they can go to the judge and go and sue the company, and then you have to have some data, right, to this is why we did it. The employee signed this memo here. He was aware of this, but he didn't follow, right? So now we have a kind of a proof that you fired the employee in the right way, so they cannot sue you if you don't have those kind of data, right? So this is going to be bad for the company because the employee can sue you, have to pay them. So this is kind of for the administration's objectives. So the human resources has this responsibility to maintain everything organized, the information kept, right? So they can be able to run the company smoothly. All right, so I explained the four objectives, right? So now we have to do this activity that I was warning you before. That's why I asked you to pay attention on those four objectives. So let's review the activity again. So each of the four types of the human resources objective is important and necessary for the organization in different ways. So you notice, right? So different types, they have different objectives. They deal with the different aspect of the company. However, at certain times, one or more can assume a greater importance than the others. It depends on the situation. For example, you're firing a lot of employees, and they're gonna they would not be happy. Some of them are going to say, why you were firing me? They may not agree with their reason, and they may want to sue the company. So now the administration objective is becoming more important. You have to have all the information because you have to defend yourself if they're suing you, right? So a lot of employees take companies to the court. So can you identify types of situation which could become most significant or urgent? I just give you an example, right? For example, for the human resources administration objectives. In the case of firing employer, they have to be ready for maybe they're going to sue the company. So take a few minutes to discuss ideas with a partner, and be ready to present those. So for example, I give you one example. Can you think about any examples of those others become more important? For example, I give you the example of this last one here, administrative objectives. Can you give some examples for the when a company is changing, right? So this one becomes more important. So what about performance objective? When this is more important? And the first one, staffing objectives. When this is more important, right? So can you stop the video and then maybe reflect on those and maybe have a discussion? This is always a nice way to fix the knowledge that you just learned in this topic here. We have talked about this slide before, so I show you the personal management and human resources management. This is the distinction between the two of them. So, and then in the last segment, I was kind of explaining more about the personal management. Now we're going to go over the human resources management, okay? So a particular theme in their work is a contention that a personal management is essentially workforce-centered, while the human resources management is resource-centered. Personnel specialists direct their efforts mainly at the organization's employees, finding and training them, arranging for them to be paid, explaining management and expectations, justifying management actions, satisfying employees' work-related needs, dealing with their problems and seeking to modify management action that could produce an unwelcome employee response. There is always some degrees of being in between management and employees, and mediating the needs of each to the other. So, all right. So there's always some degrees of being in between management and the employees, mediating each other needs. Though this is the last paragraph, so they can repeat it here. So human resources management, by contrast, is directed mainly at the management needs for the human resources, not necessarily employees, to be provided and deployed. Okay, next part is theme 1 is the social justice. The origin of human resources lie in the 19th century with the work of social reforms such as Lord Shaftesbury and Robert Owen. The criticism of the free enterprise system and the hardships created by the exploitation of workers by factory owners enabled the first personnel managers to be appointed and provide the first frame of reference in which they worked, ameliorate the lot of the workers, such as concern are not obsolete. And there are still regular reports of employees being exploited by employers, flouting the law. And the problem of organization distance between decision makers and those putting decisions into practice remain a source of alienation from work. So this is always a battle, right? So employees' rights and the boss exploitation of them, right? So and some countries have different regulations. For example, some countries they allow employees to go on a strike. Some other countries are kind of this is forbidden. So, and then we're talking here about the social justice, right? So, is that right for the boss to exploit the employees until what limit, right? Okay, providing service that make life less harsh for their employees, such as daycare, employees assistance, tend to result in higher productivity, a longer serving workforce, and a bigger pool of applicants for each job. If, for example, a person is concerned about a lot of things and the company kind of provide and help them to solve the concern, they will be working happier, right, for the company. A lot of employees find that not only the salary, right, the better salary is kind of motivating to them, especially if they have some needs that is helped by the company to solve, like a daycare in this example here. Theme 2 is the humane bureaucracy, right? The second phrase marked by the beginning of a move away from the sole focus on welfare towards the meeting of various other organization objectives. Personnel managers began to gain responsibilities in the areas of staffing, training, and organization designs, so as to maximize efficiency. The human bureaucracy stage in the development of personnel thinking was also influenced by the human relations schools, which sought to ameliorate the potential for industrial conflicts and deshumanization present to a rigid and application of those scientific management approaches. The fostering of social relationship in the workplace and employee morale thus became equally important objectives for personnel professionals seeking to raise productivity levels. This is also very important, right? Because the employer always wanted to hire the best efficient people, right? And there's a lot of factors that contribute to efficiency, right? And this is kind of a way to improve the efficiency. All right, theme number 3 is a negotiated consent. Personnel managers next added expertise in the bargaining to their repertoire of skills. In the period of full employment following the Second World War, labor became a scarce resource. This led to a growth in trade union membership. In the industries that were nationalized in the 1940s, employees were placed under statutory duty to negotiate with unions representing employees. To help achieve this, the government encouraged the appointment of personnel officers and set up the first specialist course for them in the universities. So usually when people get together, right? So this is the force of the union people, right? Because somebody alone they don't have a bargain force to negotiate. So usually people they get together and they have more force to negotiate. So the theme number 4 is organization. The late 1960s saw a switch in focus among personnel specialists away from dealing principally with the ranking and field employee on behalf of management towards dealing with the management itself and the integration of a managerial activity. This phase was characterized by the development of career paths and the opportunities within organization for personal growth. This too remain a concern for human resources specialists today. It is basically a quantitative activity boosted by the advent of information technology, which involves forecasting and organization is likely future skills needed in taking steps to ensure that they are met in practice. So this is also the human resources responsibility, right? So to make sure that they have the personnel, right, to be able to move the company forward, personnel with the skills needed for the company to run. Theme number 5, human resource management. The decline of trade of union influence in many organizations gave the managers the opportunity to develop their own practices. Previously, a collective bargain system had prevailed through which terms and conditions of the employment were negotiated by trade unions on behalf of almost everyone in the industry who work in that industry. As a result, management policies were the same throughout the whole industry in each country, meaning that these were not issues about which local managers could take decisions. So this is kind of take the decisions out of the managers, right? Because they're the same in each country, so they go kind of a federal level, right? Country level. With the decentralization of bargaining and the rise of many industries of non-union firms, managers in the private sector found themselves free and able to develop their own local policies and practices. Some choices to adopt a macho approach, particularly during necessary periods when employees were in the positions to resist the introduction of efficiency and cost-saving measures. Others sought to enhance their profitability and competitiveness by seeking to gain employment commitment and by investing in their people. So, and then we're gonna see here a division, right? Some people gonna impose. Oh, this is the macho approach. I'm gonna impose. You have no choice to the employee. But other people try to gain their commitment, right? Being nice to gain the employee commitment. So, which one is better? So, we have to see the results, and we're gonna have some discussions about that. Either way, it was not long before organizations began to take an explicitly strategic approach to the management of human resources. setting objectives and seeking in a more proactive way to achieve those or these, right? The objective is quite explicitly was to make a major contribution to the achievement and maintenance of competitive advantage. So I put the definition of the word proactive here. So take actions to prevent bad consequences before they happen. So usually for the good of the company, right? They don't care if one approach or the other. They only care about is the efficiency, which one is better, right? I don't, for example, the boss or the owner of the company might say, well, is it better to be nice to the employee? Do I get more efficiency by this way, or can I have to impose, right? So this is kind of the discussion here, right? So, and being proactive is when you know what's going to happen, why don't you take measures, right, to solve it before it happens? So it's usually it's cheaper to do this than trying to cure after happening, or to remediate after happening. I kind of make a similar approach here. For example, I have a file, PDF file, and I'm going to talk about marriage and proactivity. So this is explain the word better and also helps people understand well. So it's a much better way to save a marriage before it gets into trouble than kind of when it's already in trouble, try to solve the problem, right? So if I remember, if I have enough time by the end of the lesson, I will show you this paper here and I can have a discussion. So this is kind of a similar, right? So when the companies are kind of have an experience and how to do things in a better way to prevent bad things to happen in the future, right, with the employees. All right, so let's move on. So theme number 6, a new human resources. Some writers and commentators have recently begun to argue that we are now witnessing the beginning of a new 6th stage in evolution of personnel, human resources work. Here, instead of employees having a single, readily defined employer, they may be a number of different employers, or at the last more one organization which exercise degree of authority over their work. Examples are found in public-private partnerships, joint ventures, franchises, situations where work is outsourced by one organization to another. So a lot of times people have a contract, the kind of for example, I am here in China right now teaching at the university. So actually I'm providing service to the university, but I was hired to a mediated company. So I kind of have 2 bosses, right? For the mediated company and also the university. So this is kind of a public-private partnership, right, or joint venture. So kind of have 2 bosses, right? So and then sometimes they have to talk to each other because if they ask me to do something in the opposite of the other one, so this is going to be a conflict. Okay, the most successful organization are thus those which are the best able to recruit good people, retain them, and motivate them. This means looking after their interest and involving them as far as possible in decision making. So when you participate in decision making, you're more likely to support the company, right? Not leaving the company. Often using technology that is enable collaborative decision making. Hence, we see this evolution of thinking based around internal customers, collaboration, partnerships, and employee engagement, which are characteristics of the new this new human resources trajectory. All right, so this is kind of at the end of the class. So when I was teaching in class, actually I did give homework. Maybe it's gonna worth it, so you can see. Maybe you can try to do it by yourself. So here's a situation, right? So I kind of a study case, so I want to reflect and try to do this, okay, by yourself. So in grade 10, this is the author, right, 2004 report. The TESCO uses the following 5 identities to categorize its staff. The way that they are managed and the reward package that are available to them can thus be tailored so as to be more appropriate to the needs and aspirational of each individual. For example, work-life balance. They want it all. Pleasure seekers, life to work and work to live. So these are the kind of things that people maybe have to think about it, right? So when doing this exercise here. Which of those categories here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so best describe you as far as your present employment is concerned? So what about friends and members of your family? Choose one classmate and classify him in one of those categories and justify why you put him there. For example, right now, maybe you're not watching this in a class, right? But I want you to think about, right? Think people that you know and try to classify them. For example, are they those people who have a work-life balance? So they try to balance enough work with something resting, leisure time, or they're obsessed, like a workaholic, right? So people who want it all, right? So they kind of put so much effort because they're achievers, right? Or pleasure seekers. People they don't want to work. They work because they have to. They need the money, but as a soon, for example, I know some people in my line of profession, teaching English, right? That I'm doing right now at universities. Some people they work one semester. As soon as they get enough money, they start traveling. When the money finishes, they stop and they start working again because they're kind of a pleasure seekers. They want to travel. They don't want to work, but they work because this is the way to fund their activity, right? Life to work, right? A lot of people they kind of I don't know, they don't even take vacations or work to live, right? For example, you live to work or you work to live. So people have different approaches. So each one of us has different characteristics. And usually the human resources, when they figure out what kind of person you are, they might kind of put you in the right position for the job that you're looking for because they're going to help you be happy. All right, so this is the end of the lesson here. So let's see if I have more slides here. No, that's the end. Okay. All right, so I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.